Hey everyone, it's the PSO2 Wiki 7ins here. I don't make videos too often, but I noticed that a lot of new players, and even veteran players, tend to just skip settings and jump straight into the game, and in doing so, they tend to miss out on a lot of quality of life features. So I'm making this video to go over a few PSO2 settings that I believe to be very helpful. So let's just jump right into it, but we're not going straight into the game just yet. First off, for new players, I suggest changing your player name as soon as possible. This name is different from your character name, which is the name that you select for your characters, and your player ID, which is simply a string of numbers. Your player name is something that is assigned to you when you first create your account. It is usually the letter P followed by a string of numbers. And whenever you chat using Whisper or Alliance Chat or Group Chat, it will use your player name by default. This can be changed right here after you log onto your ship under the support menu, under Change Player ID Name. Yes, it does have the AC icon next to it, meaning that it costs money normally, but the first time you change it, it's free. So make sure you change this when you can, but make sure you think long and hard about it, because like I said, it's only the first time that's free. Make sure you pick a name that you don't regret. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into base game. So the reason why I'm choosing base game first is because there is one setting that is in base game, but affects both versions of the game. And that setting specifically is going to be under the text settings, I do believe. We'll wait till we actually get into the game. So if you go to your settings menu, go to options, game settings, under the text display settings. So here is the damage numbers. You can't find this setting in NGS, but it is affected here in base game for both versions of the game. So I've read multiple complaints from players online on Reddit and in-game about the swarming damage numbers when fighting small-sized bosses like Ancient Arms and Veteran Raylan in the open world, where because of all the players fighting it, it's just swaths of damage numbers and they don't see any of the enemy's attacks, and so they ended up getting hit. So here you can change the display sizes from large, medium, small, or even just hide it. I personally just turn off everybody else's because I just want to know my DPS and whether or not I am pretty much pulling my own weight. Anybody else doesn't matter. If they're not pulling their own weight, that's on them. All right, don't let it affect you, basically. So, but in doing so, by hiding it, I can easily see the attacks when I can easily see those smaller bosses' attacks. So, let's get some of the base game settings out of the way. Firstly, there are, under the main settings, there are, if we go down a bit, there are two menu display settings, one for when you select a character and the other when you're at the quest counter. There's category view and summary view. Category view has a smaller main menu but more subfolders. I can demonstrate this now as I click on this random character. Notice this starting menu is smaller, but there's more submenus here. Whereas if you change it to summary view and I click on that same character again, this menu's larger, but there's only two submenus at the bottom here. I personally have my character menu on category view and my quest counter on summary view. Simply because category view, you can take a quick look at it, go to whichever folder you need, and access what you need, whereas summary view, you can pretty much get in depth with each section. So that's how I have mine set up. Further down the list, will have pretty much the quality of life godsend here in base game. The auto pickup. First off, pretty much you're going to enable everything here. Meseta auto looting. What this does is when you walk over dropped Meseta, you don't have to press E to pick it up. Your character will just pick it up. As for these immediate acquisition ones, in this case, your character will pick it up as it drops without you even having to walk over them. So you can see how I have mine set up here. If you notice, I don't pick up. Well, actually, I think it's only enable and disable. So yeah, just enable it all, unless you really do have a hoarding problem. Then a little bit further down, we have this display rare drop animations. It has 3 levels where you can display 7 stars and above, 10 stars and above, and then 13 stars and above. I have mine set to 13 stars because, let's be honest, 7 stars and 10 stars in base game is still pretty much trash. Now, so that pretty much sets up most of the base game settings, base game only settings, as well as the text display settings, which is for both games. Lastly, let's see, nope. Let's go back to options. Lastly, under the control settings, you have action type settings. So here there's a 3-button setup and 2-button setup. I'm not going to explain both of them. I'm just going to suggest you to use the 3-button setup, and I'm pretty sure Sega would suggest the same thing, seeing as NGS only uses the 3-button setup, and the 2-button setup does not exist in NGS. So just use the 3-button setup. It will confuse you less as you switch games, and it is honestly just better. So, yeah. Alright. That's pretty much it for base game. Man, I missed this place. Alright, let's head over to NGS, over at the Green Gate. Let's hope my game doesn't crash. Please, please, please. Alright, it's loading. Nice. Alright. Wow, I ended up in a busy block. Let's get to the edge, because I will need the combat area or exploration area soon. So, first off, let's go to, under options, the controls tab. Alright. Go down to double tap dodging. This is a setting that you can find in both versions and will affect both versions. So there's long interval, moderate interval, short interval, and just disabled. Obviously, you kind of want it available at the very least, so it allows double tapping. So I have mine on short intervals so I don't accidentally dodge. What this does is edit the. Oops, let's actually zoom out a little bit. This allows you to edit the time required in between your double tap press to initiate the dodge. So if you notice, I can just slowly just press D and I won't dodge, whereas if I tap it really quickly, then I will. If I had set this to long interval, if you notice, I'm dodging without even really having to try, which can cause problems because that leaves you vulnerable and can also interrupt your PAs or techniques. So I would at least have it at short interval. Next up, I've disabled the diving attack with simultaneous inputs because when NGS first released and they had the diving attack, I've often used the diving attack by accident, simply by having my thumb still pressing spacebar when I attacked. I just put it on my sub palette and then from there keybind it to my gaming mouse because my gaming mouse has extra buttons. So if you have that luxury, I suggest doing so you don't accidentally just send yourself straight down to the ground when you didn't mean to. Next up, auto wall kick. I set this to manual because I want more control of my character. In doing so, I can maximize the heights when I jump and climb a mountain or hill, whatever you're trying to climb, instead of just approaching the wall and auto wall kicking at the shortest point as opposed to the highest point. So this gives me a little bit more control. And then going down, we have the rare drop animations again. This is how I have mine set up. You're welcome to set it up however you like. Alright, next up, let's go over to the gameplay tab. More specifically, all the way at the bottom. Please disable synchronization. What this does is, as you change your character from type 1 to type 2, which is male and female, or when you change it from humanoid to cast, this setting is by default enabled, and so you retain the same model slider settings in between your different models, which sucks because honestly sometimes it doesn't translate well between humanoid and cast. Secondly, sometimes I want to be a normal dude, other times I want to be a type 2 with huge knockers, so I would like to be able to edit that separately. So I would suggest you guys to do that too. Alright, let's back out of this actions or these options menu and let's go over to the control settings. This is the last setting that I kind of want to go over. I will show you guys the same setting for both mouse and keyboard and controller. Today though, I won't go over any of the keyboard keybind settings because that would take forever. Instead, I'm going over the overlooked mouse settings. Here, if you notice, I have moved action 3 from wheel click to one of my side buttons, and I have assigned X1 as weapon action. You can have this the other way if you want. It is personally up to you. X1 is your forward key, X2 is your back key. This is only going to apply to those who have mice with those extra side buttons. I personally move action 3 to a side button because it's easier to press than wheel click. As for weapon action, the reason why I have done this is it's kind of easier for me to demonstrate here, is if you look at my weapon palette and my sub palette, I don't have weapon action anywhere. By binding it to a specific key, you can free up your palette from having to have it, and you can still use it. This is incredibly useful if you're playing Force, Ranger, or Techer. Whereas you can see, my weapon palette and side palettes are full, but I can still use the guard with my side button. And this will just change it just as you switch weapons as well. So, very helpful. This is probably the most overlooked setting that I see when people are playing, and it is honestly just a big L. So, I really do suggest binding your weapon action separately. Now, to do this on controller, it's honestly not that hard. You just go to keybind settings controller, and if you scroll down, you have weapon action right here. You can bind it separately without having to put it on your action 3 or your sub palette. It frees up space. You can still use it just fine. Alright. So that's pretty much it for this simple guide on settings. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I definitely hope that this helps you guys out. See you guys next time.